Semey is the cultural hub of Kazakhstan. This centuries-old city located along the Yertis River was once the capital of the Alashorda movement that fought for equal rights for the Kazakhs. Semey is the homeland of the great Kazakh poet Abay. The skilled writer Mukhtar Auezov, who glorified Abay's name worldwide, was also born in this region. The city witnessed the creation of the first football team as well as the opening of one of the first museums. Regrettably, the city even endured the impact of nuclear weapons. Consequently, each building, street and tree here serves as a testament to the region's history.
As I'm opening the gates, I'm entering a very famous house, Anyar's house. It was originally gifted to him from Abay. Abay Khnanbaylı bought it for 500 rubles, which was an equivalent of 30 young horses at that time.
Anyar Moldabayev, who lived from 1856 to 1934, was a well-known scientist, civil servant and Kazakh to be promoted to a banker.
Anyar Moldabayev'тің әкесі Қожабай өте шебер адам болған.
Anyar Moldabayev's father, Qozhabay, was a very skilled person. Abay, recognizing his talent, brought him to his village.
Көп жыл болмай, 1-2 жылдан кейін әкесі Қожабай қайтыс болып кетті.
However, Qozhabay died just 2 years later, leaving 3 orphans. Abay took the children, including Anyar, under his wing and sent them to study in a Russian school.
Сол қаладағы орыс мектебіне оқуға береді.
Abay also helped Anyar continue his education in Tashkent. In 1892, Anyar came back home. Upon the return, again with Abay's support, he became a translator at the State Bank. In 1893, Anyar went to greet Abay. During this meeting, Abay learned that Anyar was renting out a room in a Tatar man's house and instructed his sons Magawiya and Kakitai to buy a house for Anyar.
Originally, this house only had 4 rooms, 2 above and 2 below, but Anyar Moldabayev decided to add 1 more extra room and make it as a guest room. A lot of famous Kazakh people like Magawiya and Kakitai used to stay here, but of course the most frequent and popular user of this room used to be Abay Khnanbaylı.
Anyar Moldabayev's son Sapargali retained memories of Abay Khnanbaylı's frequent visits to this house. I, Sapargali Anyarulu, was born in 1890. When I was about 8 years old, my grandfather Abay would settle in the middle of the room, which now serves as the memorial hall of the museum, reading books or writing something. My mother would prepare his favorite dishes upon Abay's arrival, pour him tea, and always keep Abay's room clean. When foreigners visited Abay, they also met here. I vaguely remember what Abay said or did during his visits. I only recall that once, while playing, I peeked into the room and he called me, sitting me at the table. He was a dark-skinned man with a round face. From the memoirs of Sapargali Anyarulu. Mukhtar Auezov also wrote about Anyar Moldabayev's house in his epic novel The Path of Abay. Anyar was depicted under the name of Danyar Kondabayev. The owners of this house are a bit different from other merchants of the city, even from other Kazakhs and Nogais. An owner of Semey stone house with a whitened ground floor is Danyar Kondabayev, well-educated man who served as a translator at the Semey branch of the State Bank. Mukhtar Auezov, The Path of Abay, Volume 4, page 41. After Abay's death, the 40th day was observed at Anyar Moldabayev's house in Semey. Observing the 40th day in Semey was reasonable. After all, Abay didn't just represent his district or clan. He is the Abay who is special for all the Kazakhs. So the 40th day after Abay's death was observed in Semey. Unfortunately, Abay died on the 40th day after his son Magawiya's death. And when the 40th day was observed after Abay's death in Anyar Moldabayev's house, the poet's son, Aqılbay, passed away.
Бұл да әрине өкінішпен еске алатын жайлардың бірі.
The first collection of poems by the great poet was compiled in Anyar's house and sent to be published in St. Petersburg.
Бұл үйдің ең бір тарихилығының бірі.
One of the stories of this house is that the first collection of Abay's poems, which was printed in St. Petersburg, was compiled here.
Түзетілуі үшін қаладан келіп отырған әрбір бет.
After Abay's son Kakitay made all the corrections, the collection was sent to St. Petersburg again.
Сөйтке беріп, қайтадан түзету жұмыстарын жүргізіп, қайтадан Санкт-Петербургқа жаңағы жіберіп отырған туралы айтылады.
Shakarim Qudayberdoğlu also sent parcels from Mecca to this house. This is known from the memories of Ahad, the son of Shakarim. I was born in July 1900. I remember my father well from the age of 5 to 6. My father sent a parcel from Mecca to Semey to a person named Aniyar. Aniyar sent them from our town to the village and kept them at his house. If asked, "What is this?" he would happily reply, "Candy sent by your father. He will give it to you upon arrival." From the memoirs of Ahad Shakarimulu. Anyar Moldabayev's house subsequently became a refuge for the Alash party and its activists. Anyar was not just the first state banking official among Kazakhs, but also an Alash activist. This fact is documented in the 1915 newspaper Kazakh. Semey. In 1913, the Mutual Credit Society was established in Semey with 301 members and 41,820 rubles. From that year, those investing in this bank could receive a loan 10 times greater than the initial amount. The bank's audit committee consisted of 12 people, including 2 Kazakhs, Anyar Moldabayev, an employee of the state bank, and merchant Gabdul Rahman Yusupov from Zarechny settlement. These two were well aware of the people's affairs. When the Semey Regional Committee of the Alash Party was created under the leadership of Alikhan Bokeykhanov, Anyar Moldabayev was appointed its treasurer. The collection of party membership fees and overall financial management became his responsibility.
All
the finances of the regional committee, the entire financial system, were in the hands of Anyar Moldabayev.
Yani Alash қайраткерлері жаңа үлкен бастама ретінде.
This indicates Anyar's knowledge, humanity and honesty, as Alash party leaders entrusted him with financial responsibilities related to a new initiative at the national level.
Білімінің, адамгершілігінің, адалдығының бір айқын көрінісі.
During troubled times, Anyar's house, purchased by Abay, became a refuge for Alash party chairman Alikhan Bokeykhanov and poet Mirzaqib Dulatov. In the memoirs, The Unquenchable Stars of Alash, Dulatov's daughter Gulnar Dulatova writes, "My father worked at the Semey Provincial Court between 1921 and 1922, and we lived in the 2-story private house of Anyar Moldabayev on Komisarskaya Street, which later became Abay's museum. We, the Dulatovs, occupied the upper floor, and the Bokeykhanovs lived on the first." In 1940, on Abay's 95th birth anniversary, the first exhibition dedicated to the poet was opened in Begbay Bayusov's house, where Abay stayed. In 1944, the museum was moved to Anyar's house. From 1947 to 1951, it was headed by the Abay scholar Kaim Muhamedkhanov. This historical footage is a gift preserved from those times.
1944 жылдан 67 жылға дейін.
The Abay Museum operated between 1944 and 1967, when it was turned into a children's library. Later in 1990, it became a museum.
Aniyar Moldabayev passed away in 1934 on the first floor of the house. Aniyar had transferred this historical building that hosted the nation's brightest minds to the bank during his lifetime. The bank did not misuse a thing. The furniture in Abay's bedroom has been well preserved. Everything remains intact, including a mirror, a writing desk, an armchair, a small wooden cuckoo clock, a bookshelf, and a wooden bed.
Шығармаларын жазған еді. Семей кітапханасы Қазақстанның ескі кітапханаларының бірі.
1967 жылдан 1988 жылға дейін бұл
From 1966 to 1988, it served as a children's library, and there were discussions about demolishing the building due to concerns about the roof collapsing.
мүмкін деген жаңағы бұл сүрілу керек деген алғашқы сол кезеңде айта бастаған. Тізіміне енген.
However, in the same period, the director of the museum, Takian Ibragimov, asked the chairman of the executive committee, Yerkitai Koshaganov, to save the building.
Арнайы кіріп, осы музейді жаңағы сүрілуден аман алып қалған екен.
In the 1990s, Aniyar Moldabayev's house was transferred to the Abay Museum, undergoing extensive renovation in 1996-1997. On September 23, 1997, in honor of the 100th anniversary of Awezov's birth, the State Museum of Abay unveiled the Alash Arası Mukhtar Awezov department.
Реставрациялық жұмыстар уақыт озған сайын сол үйлерге жүргізіп.
Restoration works need to be performed in a timely manner. Restoration preserves the historical appearance of the building.
Сол тарихи қалпын сақтап қалуында. Яғни сол замандағы
The two-story house has retained its original structure, with the rooms from that time still intact.
бөлмелердің кеңдігі, сол бөлмелердің ерекшеліктері сол қалпында сақталған. Сол заманда сол
Even the well dug back then remains.
құдықтың өзі де мысалға біз қарайтын болсақ, әлі қазір таңға шейінгі тұр.
Even though this house is more than 2 centuries old, it can still kept well with its original bricks and original wood. Perhaps even Avay himself drank the water from this exact well. It is our duty to protect legacy. It is our duty to protect things that have witnessed and documented the past, so that we pass it to the next generations to see.
Another historical building in Semey is the Ahmed Riza Madrasa. Abay had studied in this madrasa for 3 years. This fact is present in the research of Mukhtar Awezov. When Abay turned 10, his father took him to study in Semey. Previously, he had studied at home. In Semey, his first teacher was Tatar Mullah Gabdul Zapar. Later, Abay was taught by Mullah Ahmed Riza. Both served as imams in the mosque. There was a madrasa by the mosque. Most students lived and studied there. In the 3rd year of madrasa education, Abay entered the Russian parish school. In just 3 months, he finished his Russian studies. And in 3 years, Abay completed the Muslim education. The Ahmed Riza Mosque Madrasa was opened in the 1850s. The mosque's Imam Ahmed Riza was a scholar who graduated from the Marjani Madrasa in Kazan. Besides religious education, the madrasa delved into the study of the Turkic, Arabic, and Persian languages, poetry, oratory, mathematics, geography, and natural sciences. The mosque madrasa is built of wood and has a foundation. Originally, the building was located along the former Soldatskaya Street. In 1990, by the government's decision, the Ahmed Riza Madrasa was relocated to the Jidebay Burele State Museum Reserve. The mosque served as a place of worship. In 1949, they restored the burnt minaret of the mosque. In 2020, a major renovation was carried out. Aniyar's house and Ahmed Riza Madrasa are the spiritual centers of Semey. Meanwhile, the Museum of Fine Arts, named after the Nevzorov family, is the city's arts hub.
The construction of this unique complex was completed in 1878-1879. Two spacious buildings were designed as a residence, while the third, long structure, was constructed as a wholesale warehouse for wine, buckets, and the residence of the warehouse manager.
This architectural monument was built of wood in the 19th century by the merchant Fyodor Stepanov for his family. In 1867, the residential house was completely demolished and this gigantic building was erected in its place. The Stepanov family had often had distinguished personalities as guests in this house, including the famous writer Fyodor Dostoevsky.
Wow! It feels like the 19th century in here. This place is giving me chills. This is where the Stepanovs family used to have their cultural gatherings at. Balls, guest evenings, everything used to be here. But of course, it's better to see this place once than hear about it 1,000 times.
In this hall, the first professional theatrical productions took place. An entry was paid. The money collected was transferred to the city treasury. The Stepanov house was the cultural center of Semey.
Вообще купцы, они вносили в жизнь города такой дух культуры.
The merchants were the ones who brought cultural spirit to the city. When traveling abroad, they brought not only goods but also works of art.
Они привозили с собой не только товар,
For example, even then, paintings by Italian artists
то есть в этом доме еще в то время
from the 17th, 18th centuries hung on the walls of this house.
17-18 века итальянских художников.
After Fyodor's death, the house was owned by his son, Mikhail. However, Mikhail was not capable of retaining his father's wealth. Due to debts, Mikhail sold the family home to the Oskimen landowner Yefim Shiglov, who leased the building to the district court. This was early 20th century. After the 1917 revolution, the building was owned by the government, becoming an office for various organizations.
Вначале, когда Федор Степанов построил этот дом, колонн вот этих красивых, которые вы видите,
When Fyodor Stepanov constructed the house, it didn't have the beautiful columns we see today. Initially, the building comprised 3 separate sections. Only in the 1950s, a new entrance was opened on the former Stepanov, now Bespaev Street, and the second and third sections were merged.
вот третий и второй корпус. Вот фойе, который, когда вы вошли, отдельно был вход тоже. Вот он один из...
The lobby, which used to be a separate entrance, retained its original appearance. The wooden stairs leading to the second floor were replaced with a stone staircase in 1890.
Делается постепенно ремонт. И планировали в 1940-х.
In the 1940s, there were plans to add a third floor, but the outbreak of World War II halted the constructions. The columns were eventually added around 1960s.
Ремонты тогда не проводились. А вот колонны приблизительно, они были построены уже в 60-е годы 20 века.
This architectural monument, which served as an office at different times, was left without proper care and has significantly deteriorated. In 1998, the museum named after the Nevzorov family was relocated to this building.
Когда, прежде чем музей переехал, нужно было сделать ремонт. И сделать ремонт так, что...
Complete renovation was carried out here before the museum was relocated. Efforts were made to preserve the historical appearance of the building during the repairs. For example, in this hall, where important meetings took place in the 19th century, they attempted to recreate the colors and beautiful patterns on the ceiling. They ordered wooden flooring to evoke the atmosphere of the 19th century.
Чтобы многое было так, как в 19 веке. Заказали...
As the building served as offices for many years, thick layers of plaster had to be removed from the walls.
Кабинет было все переоборудовано, и нужно было убирать эти толстые стены.
Yuri Vladimirovich Nevzorov, a Moscow collector and engineer known for building bridges, understood visual arts. Using his savings, he purchased numerous famous paintings, primarily by Russian artists. He opens an exhibition in Semey and donates a collection of paintings by renowned artists to the museum.
Он был поражен историей города, он был...
Yuliy Nevzorov was impressed by the city's history and the hospitality of its residents.
которые работали, сотрудничали.
As a tribute to the professionalism of the museum staff, he gifted the museum classic works of Russian art from the 17th and 18th centuries.
17-18 века русское искусство.
The Nevzorov family gifted the museum 569 works of art, including 177 masterpieces of painting. Among them are works by Ivan Shishkin, Isaac Levitan, Ivan Kramskoy, and other Russian and Western European classics.
This exhibit is the most sobering in the museum. Rembrandt made it by using a technique of etching. Only a dozen of those exist in the world, and one of them is located here, attracting the eyes of the visitors.
The building and exhibits of the Nevzorov's Museum of Fine Arts are equally valuable and historically significant. The central objects of this episode, Aniyar's house, Ahmed Riza Madrasa, the museum named after the Nevzorov family, are like voluminous books telling the story of a bygone era. Over the years, the value and significance of these architectural monuments will only continue to grow.